We have a presentation about state channels all the way from Buenos Aires.
No,
with over 40 of years of experience in development between the two of them. One is a security expert, and the other one's an expert in system programming from Coin Fabric. It's David Weil and Hernan Di Pietro. I hope I pronounced it rightly. Yep. Thanks. One for you. And we're going to have one more mic. Yep. Okay. Welcome, guys.
Okay. Hi. Okay. Do you want to start? Yeah.
Hi, friends. We are Hernan and David from Buenos Aires, Argentina. And we will talk about the experience we got in developing some solutions involving aeternity state channels. Probably we all know the features or what are state channels, but we will do a very quick introduction or review of the general idea of state channels in the world or ecosystems of blockchains. We can say quickly that it's a communication channel between two or more participants in the network. The channel state is kept synchronized by signed and secure by the channel participants, and it will remain invisible except when the state of the channel is settled on chain. For example, in channel open, closing, or snapshots operations. You can query, of course, every participant has its own balance. And while after a channel is created, you can, of course, deposit more funds or withdraw from the channel. Every participant can withdraw or deposit. And of course, it's the important thing that participants can exchange funds, tokens, do transfers between them, among them.
Okay, and the reason for the state channels is like they were created as a kind of enhancement for the blockchain that allowed the participants to perform more transactions without having to incur in a fee expending on each transaction, and also this allows to the participants to perform transactions without needed to wait for a new block to the transaction to be included. So in this way, this allows the participants to perform transactions immediately. And also, aeternity includes more features than that in its state channel implementation. Like, first, it is nice that it is included natively in aeternity. State channels are first-class citizens, so you can do many things and use them. And you can also run smart contracts on them, send generic message, take snapshots to use in more generically. Yes.
And now what we do with all that power? We thought that you can build interactive applications such as games, or just be for the interactivity of the game, or for example paying in games for payment into the games, doing instant messaging applications, and more or less replace traditional payment methods. So this, having that in mind, our first experiment was to craft a simple game, a turn-based board game such as Reversi, which is called Othello in some countries, and we explore the possibilities of running smart contract code in the channels, which was a very neat experience. To do, for example, validating moves, checking if some states in the game were valid, and so on. This game was published in a very experimental form. Our project is to, in the future, integrate it in the base app, like we do in the next.
No.
That's your that's your slide. Okay.
Okay. After the game, we took this application to develop, which is like a more real or maybe real useful application, which is a payment hub using state channels. For those who were already in the URL's talk today in the morning, you can think of this like a centralized version of the virtual state channels. What is it about is like having a centralized server, which is called hub, which allow to reduce the amount of state channels required to communicate some community or customers group to a set of sellers. If this way, if any customer will have to pay lot of less fees and can perform repeatedly transactions and do that in an immediately way. Also, it is good because reduce the amount of channels that are created and have to be kept in parallel. And if you have some centralized server, each time that a customer wants to buy something in a different place, which already is connected to the hub, it doesn't have to create a new channel. It can reuse the channel the customer has already created against the hub. I don't know if I'm clear, but I think that the graph is clear. Okay, this application has two parts. The previous one was the hub, which was the server, and the other part was the client side that Hernan will talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. This is the client side of the hub and of the payment system that has the hub as his central component. We did this first thinking into integration of it into the base app to leverage its features and its future features. For example, to be able in the future to use what any service the base app may provide, for example, hardware wallets or air gap or anything the developers of the base app can offer. It simply allows merchants and customers to sell and buy things through the payment hub that David recently was talking about. It has an onboarding scheme for that we thought of a stage where you can, by scanning a QR code, get information from the network or from the hub to connect to a particular hub. And regarding what I talked about the base app services, we used, for example, a QR scanning service that the base app provided us. In that way, we have, for example, QR scanning capabilities for all mobile platforms without hassle. In brief, it's a mobile Vue.js application. We used the SDK, the aeternity JavaScript SDK channel API. And basically, we start with the first model, in where we thought of a model where the application was always connected. For example, a customer opened a channel and it will keep it open until the finish of his operation. But that was very impractical because, you know, mobile operating systems will slash you WebSockets connections, anything that you are running on an application when you, for example, put the mobile to sleep, or it goes to sleep automatically. So that's very impractical to do. And thanks to the aeternity state channels capability of entering, connecting and leaving and re-entering connections very fast, we could do the second version, which is basically the customer or merchant will create a channel and will open it at demand when just an operation on the channel is required, and in practical terms, it is always offline. Just the channels are open on demand with the reconnection and reestablish feature of the channel API.
Okay, this application is almost finished, but anyway, we have in mind some other features we want to include, like offline payment. If we can use the Eternity State Channel API to perform payments, even if one party is disconnected. Like for example, if the customer doesn't have connection, the merchant can prepare the transaction, transfer via QR code to the customer, who will sign it and return to the merchant, who will send to the hub for it to be included in the state channel the hub has with the customer. If that is confirmed, the payment will be realized, and that could be possible because when you create the channel, you may choose how much funds do you want to deposit in it. So it can be used perfectly in an offline way, but we haven't included that yet. Also, the application is open source, and we have the links available. Also, we made two applications for the mobile phone, one for the seller or merchant and one for the client or customer. We want to show in that. Maybe we do that some of these days. And also, in this moment, the merchant application is really simple. Just you insert how much you will require to pay, and optionally you can enter some description. This is simple, but it may be also helpful for the merchant to have some kind of prefix marketplace or something, which will be faster. Oh, sorry. When we're doing this, we wanted to know how many users will this support concurrently. We run some tests, basic tests. Just we take our client script version and let it spawn like 5 connections by second, and we reach like 300 clients doing its purchases online without any single problem. Only thing we had to do was set up the node configuration, because we were using the node setup from the Docker images which aren't prepared for such things. They are more likely configured for development purposes. So I include a link to the configuration which will allow you to have thousands of state channels running at the same time. What is remarkable is that apart from that little setting, we haven't changed the sources of our clients nor our servers for this. Okay, these are some like maybe silly tips and tricks we found we want to share to so you don't have to waste some time that we did because not doing this the first time we started to work with this. And the first one is the state channel has two pairs only in aeternity, and to create a state channel, both have to share the same settings on creation, except by the role, which is one is an initiator and the other the responder. So we have prepared in our protocol first channel parameter exchange, in which both parts agree which parameter will be used. So this is silly, but is really save us a lot of time.
On the point 2, this is just reminder of what we have done in case of the offline and online alternatives. We think that it's a good way of using the state channels are using keeping always offline and connecting as required. Because we think that reconnection features are pretty well working now in the current Node and SDK. So you can build pretty neat software with it.
Sorry.
Yep.
Also, at least when you reestablish, or at the version we have, when you reestablish a channel, you also have two more parameters that you must specify when you are going to connect to a state channel, which are the channel state and channel ID. Also, in this case, and as this is a centralized solution and we rely in the hub, is the hub just the one we have keep track of those parameters, and it made those available for the client to also connect at the same time and establish its connection. So again, the feature before is good for this case too. Sorry.
No problem. So the number 3 is the in development stage. It is useful to reduce the minimum depth, since channels are fast, but channel creation and opening involves waiting a lot. So it is useful to for debugging try to keep the minimum confirmation time. And I think that it will be useful also to as the guys from the Forge team mentioned, to have an auto mining application that can help to develop the channel software fast. And number 4, what do you want to?
Yes, when you are developing these things, you need to track many information. So if you have complete deserialization and serialization functions already in place, you will do much use of them during all the time you develop. Okay. So we made some tools where we were working on this. Like the first one is to transfer found. I think that maybe we can use also a CLI tool for that, but we already have one made, so it's available. Also, we made some tools to use a massive amount of accounts, like to move funds from many different accounts, like all miners, to one, so we can easier transfer funds to test things, and from one account to many. Like when you are having to create 300 channels, you better have funds in all those accounts, and you need different accounts for that. So those are useful. Um, Create also is a massive account creation tool, and we are working on a simplified version of the hub we made, which called chat server, and we pretend this to be useful to test state channel things. Like it's easy to write an echo server or some little modules that can provide you different tests, one which its own address just by calling them, or and that will allow you to test everything you want to do in a state channel. And that's it. And
That's
thank
it.
thank you all the teams for the great help you gave us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, it's okay. Questions about Buenos Aires, maybe the weather?
So I I could mention a couple of things that we are thinking about, or that we have started improving, partly due to this experience. So one of the things you mentioned, the leave and reestablish, there are kind of two scenarios now. There is the reestablish and the reconnect. The reconnect is when the FSM is there and the WebSocket has gone down, and you reconnect to an already running FSM. And the reestablish is when you create a new FSM instance on your side and reconnect to the other side. The what we're working on is to merge those two into one single reconnect method, so that you as an app user or app won't have to know which one of those scenarios it is. And that basically works now, but the SDK will have to formalize it a little bit. Another thing is we will add sort of a random session token that you use to identify yourself with. So you don't have to, currently the reconnect method, you're supposed to sign a transaction, and that's not very practical in this scenario. So once you get the session token, you keep that, and then you're going to be able to reconnect, and that's the authentication you need. And we think that will be a lot easier. We will also add support for changing the minimum depth and other parameters while running, so that you could, for example, start a channel with minimal funds and 0 confirmation, and then deposit funds as you go along and perhaps increase the minimum depth confirmation. There is also a parameterized minimum depth formula that adjusts the minimum depth to the amount that you want to secure, and that's already in there. So yeah, we're very grateful that you did this, because it provided us with very useful feedback that we have been lacking for quite a while. It's the real world is fun.
Thank you. We actually didn't have much problems with the difference about reconnection or established connection, because when we started, I think there was only reestablish method, and it worked perfectly for us. We love that feature, and it was completely reliable. And yeah, our conclusion was that everything is work great. Just our complaint was little features like these things in SDK, like having to synchronize all the parameters and these things that I think are easier to work around, if you want to say it that way. And it's great that you are relaxing those conditions in some way. Thank you.
One more question. One more question. Wait. We have one more question. That's good.
Actually, it's not really a question. There is there is this project that is funded by the ventures. I think it's called Abant Payments, that are making payments for concerts, let's say, or events. And I think they could really use your application. Actually, I think this is going to improve their flow significantly. And probably Amin or Nicole can. I don't see Abant guys here, so probably they should put you in contact with them, if that could be helpful for them.
That's good to know. Thanks, Vitor.